we come here on this feast day of Mary, the Mother of God. It seems so apropos for this good man. For it was in a parish by that very name that our dear Bishop Curlin spent 13 years of his ministry working among the poor. Some 36 years ago, when I was a new seminarian, on a cold winter night, much like tonight, we were coming back from a sick call at Georgetown University Hospital, and he said, let's go down and take a look at the pageant of peace on the mall. So we came down Pennsylvania Avenue, and we stopped there, and we looked at the tree and walked about, and then he said, I understand that new Vietnam Veterans Memorial is going on just down the street. It's being built. Why don't we go visit? And the sun was lowering down below the horizon. It was starting to get dark. We pulled up. In those days, you could park anywhere you wanted on the mall. And we walked up this concrete ramp. It was just mud on the other side. Freezing cold, wind blowing across. And those deep and dark panels, almost onyx black, had been laid side by side. Not all of the 58,000 names were even placed just yet. They were still putting the panels in. We began to talk to the veterans, and then Monsignor Curlin talked to them about their brothers in arms. And they talked about reaching out and touching the names of the men with whom they had served. The sun got dimmer and dimmer and dimmer. And they said, our brothers are coming to look for their names. We can't even see them. They haven't put the lighting along the walkway yet. And Bishop Curlin turned to me and he said, let's go. He was a practical man. If you knew him, you understood that. So we went back to Mary, the Mother of God, which was a novena church, which meant we had candles. We had lots of candles. And he had this old brown Bonneville, and we filled the trunk with cases of those 12-day votive lights. Then there were more cases in the back seat. I had 2 cases on my lap. Back down to the mall we went. And the veterans helped us unload the candles, and we lined that sidewalk in front of those black granite panels. Lined them with the candles from Old St. Mary's. And then we lit them. And now there was a pathway of light that extended up across those panels, and you could see the veterans then reaching and touching the names. It was a pathway of light. But it was a metaphor for his ministry and life, because that light was not his. He just gave them the tools to see. It's what he did for all of us. The prophet Isaiah is always looking forward, always promising the people, saying, I know what you've been through, but there's another way. Because on this holy mountain, something special will happen. God will come and be with you. He will abide with you. In the words of Pope Francis, he will accompany you on your journey of life, no matter what comes. Each one of us in this church, and so many hundreds of people far beyond the reaches of these doors, have had their lives touched by this good man, because he served as a kind of sign to something greater, a pathway to that light that was not his own. It's not what he was about. He's always pointing to something greater, something more beautiful. Always with an optimistic tone, always with an underlying sense of joy. This man who lived 90 years, 60 years in the priesthood, never lost his idealism. He said to me on the first day of my priesthood, when he preached my first Mass, he said, "Your family here, so many of these folks, they will move away. And in time, they will be replaced by your parishioners, the people of God. And if you love them," he said, "if you love them, they will move mountains for you. If your people sense you do not love them, they will not cross the street to say hello. They will become, if you love them, your family, your dear friends. And that is a sign of God's presence among us." The story of the disciples walking on that road to Emmaus, it was a way in which Bishop Curlin showed us, through his love for the Eucharist as the center of his life, that we recognize the Jesus among us in the breaking of the bread. All through his ministry as a parish priest, when I first met him when I was 7 years old, he gave me my first communion and told me I would be a priest, and I knew the fix was in. But that kind of idealism, that kind of joyful spirit, that kind of optimism and love for the Lord and the Blessed Mother, it filled our hearts, didn't it? Because he recognized that his role in life as a pastor, whether that was of a church community or a wonderful diocese like this, was to bring Jesus to our hearts, to have us recognize that we walk the earth with Jesus within us. He was fond of that expression of Mother Teresa of Calcutta, who said, "Heaven does not begin when we die. Heaven begins when we understand that God comes down upon the altar and becomes one with us in the Eucharist." He helped us to understand that it was real, that God's love for us is real, that God's love for us, especially this season of Christmas, is alive. The miracle of the Incarnation is what happened in Bethlehem so many centuries ago, but what can happen in each one of our hearts, and with that presence we can change the world. That's what he did for us. He understood that he was simply an instrument of God's peace. There was a sense in which, and you've experienced this with him, that he accepted us for who we were and then invited us to grow, even when some of us, my brother priests, were, well, shall we say, diamonds in the rough. He focused on the diamonds and not the rough. He gave us a chance to grow, to understand the love that Jesus had and continues to have for each one of us. You know, we talk a lot today about legacy. We talk a lot about the legacy that people leave when they go to the Lord. His legacy, the legacy of however you knew him, Father Bill, Monsignor Bill, Bishop Curlin, this remarkable man, his legacy lives on. Lives on in the over 200 men that he sent to the seminary as the vocation director in Washington, D.C. Lives on in the homeless women that he helped through his founding of the Mount Carmel House at Old St. Mary's in Washington, D.C. Lives on in the countless souls who were lifted up and given hope and given that light of God's love that we celebrate in this season of Christmas, through his example, through his love for the Lord, through his contagious sense that God's love is real, and that he walks the earth in each one of us, and that it is the Jesus in us that then is compelled to find the Jesus in one another. And so, Bishop Bill, we thank you. We thank you for being that beautiful conduit of God's love and consolation and hope in a world that many times is riddled by cynicism. You have taught us to let the cataracts of skepticism fall from our eyes and to see this tender and compassionate God in our own hearts and in the lives of one another. And so we thank you. We thank you for letting God's love and his light guide you and to touch our hearts. And we thank you for loving all of us so very well.